Will God let me into heaven? I think that's a great question to ask. So let's start off by thinking about what God requires for us to go to heaven. In Revelation 21:27, it says, "Nothing impure will ever enter the holy city," which, if you read the chapter, is kind of what we think of as heaven. "Nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful." So nothing impure will enter heaven. So are we impure? Might be the question we would ask. Well, here's what Jesus said in Matthew 5:20. "For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." And the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were known for being very religious people, people who held the letter of the law to the nth degree. And yet Jesus was saying, unless you're more righteous than that, unless you have a right standard of living that's higher than that, you'll never make it to heaven. In Romans 3, says there is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who seeks God. There's no one who does good, not even one. And so if you ask the question, will God let me into heaven? And I look at nothing impure can enter heaven, and that we need to have a righteousness that's better than the Pharisees, and that in Romans it says that none of us are righteous. I'm thinking no. You're not going to make it into heaven, at least at this point in the conversation. Let's think about it a little bit more. When I was in college at Iowa State University, I went to a final one day, and there was another class still in session, and so I was waiting out in the hallway, and I'm kind of looking around at everybody else. I'm like, I don't recognize anybody here. And eventually the other class left, and we went into the classroom, and I kind of stood back a little bit watching, and the professor came in, and I'm like, oh no, that's not my professor. And I went back out into the hallway, and I'm digging through all my papers. I'm like, oh man, the final was yesterday. And to make matters worse, I don't remember any other professor doing this, but I remembered that on the first day of class, he made a really big deal about, if you ever miss a test, you get a 0. Don't call me, don't plead, don't ask any questions, just you get a 0. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? I felt sick to my stomach. So finally I called him up. I'm like, look, I missed the final. I don't know what I was thinking. I had the wrong day in my head. And I know that you said this on the first day of class, but I got to just beg for mercy. Can you let me retake it? And he's like, sure, okay, you come in tomorrow. And he let me retake it, and it was cool, and I passed the class, and so it all worked out. But it wasn't something I deserved. It was just because he was merciful to me, thankfully. And Jesus told kind of a similar story in a way, that there was a tax collector who were known to be notoriously sinful, and he wouldn't even look up to heaven. He beat his breast and he cried out to God, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. He didn't deserve anything. And this man went home justified because God showed mercy on him. And I think the thing we need to understand is God didn't save us because we're righteous, because we did enough good things like the Pharisees, even though they didn't do enough. God saves us through his mercy. And so that prayer the guy prayed, God have mercy on me, a sinner, that's our hope right there. That's our phone call. Please be merciful to me. And the great thing is God responds. And I encourage you to make that call today, to cry out to God and say, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Save me. And you'll enter into the most wonderful relationship you've ever had.